He's an actor, writer, and director, multi-talented. And he was to be on the show yesterday. And there was a lot of people who wanted to hear from him. And like I said, we go through time zone differences. So what we wanted to do is make it at a time where more people could be involved. And we're very honored to have him on the show with us today. It is the one and only Nickolas Nielsen. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Keith. Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, look, listen, man, it's an honor. We're glad to have you with us today. We know you're busy working on wonderful projects. That we'll get into. But first, let me start out by asking, when did you know that this is what you were going to do? I mean, when you first got into the industry, getting your feet wet, were you taking theater, or did you get into some acting, or just how did it all begin for you?
That's a great question. When I was younger, ever since I was a kid, I just loved movies. Parents always took me to see the films. My dad was always a big pusher. He said, it's like, look, this kid loves films. He should do films. And that's kind of where I got involved with it.
Oh, okay. So pretty much the love was just already there. It's one of those things where you, kind of like myself and so many people, where you're watching TV and you're like, this is going to be me one day. Okay.
So, at a very young age, I started getting into television and radio, actually. Taking courses. I competed in a few state competitions. I competed in a national competition at one point, and I just kept pursuing it. And then when I went to college, I realized, okay, I want to be a filmmaker. I've learned all the technical aspects. I've learned how to operate a camera. I've learned how to edit. I don't know how to work with actors. So, all throughout college, I started studying theater around Gulf Coast, Texas, and that's where I met my wife. That's where I made a lot of great friendships, where I began my screenwriting, and I just kind of fell in love with the whole art of acting and working with directors and communicating and making something from the ground up. It just made me appreciate it that much more.
Right, because, coming into the industry that way, like you say, just learning how, even talking about editing, you really had to break down to learning the fundamentals of putting together, a project. And that turned out to be a lot different for you than when you jump in front of the camera and start acting. Obviously, there's.
Oh, of course.
Right. Now, so which one, let me ask you this question. And I always get the answer. I don't know if you're going to say it that way, but I'll tell you the answer I always get. No, it seems that no one likes producing as much. People do it because they have to. But, which one do you actually like to do more? I know you have to do it all, but are you more, do you like the directing more, the writing, or the producing? Which one's better for you?
Because I've stepped back and I've just done individual roles at times where I have just been a producer, production manager, and I have seen a project come that someone else created that other people were working on from the ground up. And it was very rewarding because I was there every step of the way in the process. Same with writing. It was nice to just be able to write something, have a great idea, and then I handed it off to someone else and let them see what they could do with it. And then I've acted I've directed, and then I've just acted. If I ultimately had to give you the answer, I probably have to say writing. I love just coming up with the ideas, and I love to be able to just, watch it get made just from a thought that was in my head.
Right, and I asked that question because coming from someone like yourself who began with doing those technical aspects of it, I was wondering, is it a lot? Is it more easy for you, or not so much as easy, but just is it better for you to handle? A lot of times, people who come into the industry and they're acting the whole time and then jump over into the field of directing and producing might find it a little more difficult. Like anything else, when you're just learning, it's different for you. And so, that's what made me really kind of ask that question, because then from your side, sometimes when people go into acting, it's different when they go into that second nature.
Oh, of course. Even as much as I've kind of gotten my feet wet in every aspect, I'm still always learning. I am by no means a professional. And I've spoken with people that are professional, that have been doing this. They've been doing it probably longer than I've been alive, and they said, we're still learning. It's constantly a changing industry. So it's nice. It's nice to know that we're kind of, we can all, even though we're all, in this industry, we're all trying to do the best we can. Some people are very good at their craft. They're like, hey, every day is an adventure.
Well, you know what, and that, like you said, that's a good thing though, because even in this industry, you still learn new things, and it's also great when you can work. Look, and I've noticed a lot of times there's people who are always open to teaching, and you know, nobody's stingy with the knowledge. Most people in this industry, I notice, as some might think. You know, if you're working with someone and you're doing a job and you're looking and saying, hey, you know, how did you do that? Or you know, it's people are okay with you using different ideas to learn your craft, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's great, and with that, it's really been. I just came off of a project called Critical Fumble.
Right.
It was based on a script that I wrote. I wrote this back in college. It was me and a friend of mine. We both gotten out of really bad relationships. We both been broken up with, and then we were kind of bonding over playing Dungeons and Dragons. And then we said, this should be a show. Like, you know, a bunch of nerds would sit around and play this role playing game, and you know, deal with their heartache in their own strange ways, which is what we did.
Right.
So I wrote that pilot back in 2009, and it just sort of sat in my computer, and I never touched it. And then when I moved out here, I got involved with some people, a lot of, you know, creative guys like myself.
Right.
And when we all got together, it was very ensemble. Like, I had a certain vision, but then I kept having friends. You know, I had people. One guy in particular who was a producer of mine, a producing friend of mine. He had never been involved in the film industry, but he loved films. So he came and he's like, well, what about this? Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? And it just became very collaborative, and I was always open to it. I loved hearing everyone's ideas, and it just became. It was still very much the image that I had wrote, but I could definitely say it was a very collected piece because everybody brought something to that table.
You know, isn't that a wonderful thing? How when you are in the position to be able to make films or create films, that you can use your creativity. That's like one of the best parts. Is you can be working on something, and like you say, you can have people around you like, well, why don't you do this? And you're in that control point where you can do that and experiment with that idea. That makes it a wonderful thing, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, I love it. When we're working on things like that, it's probably one of the best and rewarding experiences. It's the most. It's a very tough and long process, but it is very rewarding at the same time.
Now, what was Critical Fumble about? Listen, first of all, that's a very catchy title. I love the title, but let everybody out there know what the kind of what the plot is behind Critical Fumble.
Sure. I mean, you know, it's got that very odd couple setup. You know, you have two guys, polar opposites, and now they have to live with each other. You know, you have one but they're both socially awkward. They're just awkward on the opposite ends of the spectrum. You have one guy, his name is Don, played by a very talented actor named David Jonas, who is that nerdy IT guy. He's supposed to be like that long-suffering Charlie Brown type character.
Okay.
Gets kicked out of his home from his girlfriend, played by the wonderful Cassandra Ness, and then he has nowhere to go. So he winds up getting invited in to stay with me, my character, by the name of Paxton, who's this kind of rich, drunk. I described him as a less talented Mark Zuckerberg. He invented something really great a long time ago, and he's just still living off of it.
Oh, okay, all right.
So he's a bit of a drunk, but he hangs out with all these nerds. They all get together and play D&D, and then when he realizes that his friend has needs a place to stay, he finds out he's getting cut off from his wealth, so he now needs he needs money, so he invites them to stay with him. And it ultimately looks like, oh, he's just using him. But then as the course of the show goes on, you realize that they're actually starting to become friends, like better friends, and they're actually trying to like help make each other better people. And but it's still got that kind of like pop culture humor, that nerd humor, and a little raunchy humor too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It sounds like it's something for everyone. You know, like you say, you've got your nerdy guy, and then you got you got your other character who, like you say, he's living off his wealth. He's a fun guy, but he kind of, because does he work in the show? He seems like they kind of got it. Just like you say, he lives off his wealth. He's just kind of sitting around. He's cool, so he represents for the cool people that are just enjoying life. But then they go through those real situations that everybody has to deal with. Also, reality.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah. That's very much exactly him, and he's got a bit of a substance problem. He drinks a lot, and sometimes at appropriate times. So,
but that's normal.
Right.
That makes for some crazy nights on the show, I assume.
Oh, of course. I'm actually not a big drinker, and I'm not, I don't do any substances. I only socially drink at the most, and that's as far as I go. I was initially inspired by two friends of mine in particular, who both of them happened to be named Paxton, and I was just like, these guys are characters, It's like, I can't believe guys like this are real. They're like a young, handsome Hunter S. Thompson type, and that's sort of where I got inspired to write that character.
Mm-hmm. Now, talking about because some other projects that you've been on, let's talk about Hidden. As a matter of fact, I think you directed and produced that.
Yeah, I wrote, produced, and directed it. That was my senior thesis when I was attending the Seattle Film Institute, and it was a great film. I loved working on it. We shot it on Super 16 millimeter. We shot it out in the woods for. It's a period piece, a World War II film. We shot it out in the woods in a few days. It stars wonderful Scott Brown, who some people may or may not know him. He's in a great film called The Gamers, Darkness Rising, and he's in the sequel that just came out, Gamers, Hands of Fate. Very talented, very funny actor. Played a really great dramatic role in this film. We thought we actually had a shot at getting it into the Seattle International Film Festival, and sadly it never got in. But it's online. People are they can watch it, and we're all really proud of it. It was just a very tough little film to make.
Okay. Now, when you're doing a project, let's see, how do you all know when that when you film? How do you know, and when do you say to yourselves, okay, this is ready to go? This is this is what the people want to see. Do you have a certain formula that you follow to know that?
Well, I mean, this is how that project came up. We, in film school, everybody gets to pitch a script. Or at least this is the way that my film school worked. Everyone got a chance to pitch a script. We'd all read it aloud in class. Everyone would give notes. People would, critique it. You would get feedback. And I had already directed one. We had a big group project. My script got picked. I directed it. And essentially I figured, okay, that's it. I'm not going to direct again, because that's sort of how the school worked. Everybody seemed to only get a chance to direct once.
Right.
But then I wrote this script, and everybody just loved it. I was getting positive feedback from everyone in my class. They said, this is really good, that you could adapt this into a feature. So ultimately I would say it's the positive feedback, and I wound up directing twice in my class. I was the only one in my class that got to direct twice. And we made that film. So when I moved out here and I started making friends with a lot of people, I'd give them occasionally, I'd be like, hey, here's the script I have, or hey, I have this idea. And generally it's always feedback I get. Everybody just says, that's really funny, or that's really cool. You should, or they might give me a note saying, well, you could do this, you could do that. And I take it with a grain of salt. I'm like, all right. And I go back and I'll change it up a bit, and then I'll say, oh, you're right, they were right. And that's ultimately where it comes from, is just showing it to personal friends and getting a second pair of eyes on it.
Yeah, that's a good way too, because the people closer to you, they're going to give you the real criticism about things. You know what I mean? Opposed to, I guess sometimes being a filmmaker, do you ever worry about, well, not worry, but do you ever, think sometimes to yourself, okay, because there's those people out there that when you make a project, you feel like they're going to say yes to everything. They're going to be like, okay, this is great. And so you kind of have to split down the middle, the people that you get your opinions from, I assume, right?
Yes and no. Everybody, I definitely have friends that they will give me the harsh reality, and I have a lot of friends that now do work in the film industry, and if they tell me, they think, hey, that's a cool idea, or there have been times I pitched them an idea, and they said, I don't see that working, and then I step back, and I look at it, and I'm like, all right, maybe they were right. Right.
You're like, what was I thinking or something when I wrote that, right?
Well, sometimes in the moment you think you have the best idea in the world, and then you sleep on it, and then the next day you're like, yeah, maybe not, So generally stuff like that, where maybe I'll take that idea, and maybe I'll use it, or I'll work on it later, that kind of thing, or I'll just throw it out altogether.
I know what you mean. I do it all the time on some of the simplest things. I'm like, wait a minute now, hold on. I should go redo this. Now, let me ask you, if you could write yourself into, if you could make a film and give yourself the dream character role, what would it be?
Oh gosh, look, if generally as I've gotten older, I've kind of been trying to step behind the camera know, it's like I just want to be the guy that creates. But if I had to create something and that I wanted to act in, I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, as I've gotten older, you know, like Marvel Entertainment the Marvel Studios have been making just such great products, and I've been a big comic book nerd growing up. I would love to be a part of a Marvel production in a second. Like if they called me tomorrow and they said, we want you to play Howard the Duck, and you get killed in the next scene, I'd say, I'm in. Please.
You know, and those, you know what, and that actually, you know, that sounds creative. I can tell, you know, according to you know the way it sounds like you like to write, that you would love to put together positive characters that really everybody can enjoy, like the people that nobody will hate in the movie. You know what I mean?
Well, even if you can make a character that maybe people will hate, but I mean, I think ultimately it has to work within the boundaries of the story. Like, they have to complement one another. You know, you can have the characters you don't like, but that makes the characters you do like, you like them that much more because you want them to succeed, or you want this guy that you hate, you want him to fail, or vice versa. I mean, it just ultimately has to complement the story overall.
Right. Now, look, now let's talk about Bruceploitation, this documentary that you guys are working on. Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, sure. Gosh, where do I begin? I got to go back a couple years now with this. Back in high school, I started doing martial arts. I started studying Taekwondo. I did it from age 15 to 18, and I absolutely loved it. I unfortunately had to quit just right before I graduated high school, and I kind of regretted it, but, you know, that's another subject. But I ultimately fell in love with the art, and in doing so, I really fell in love with Bruce Lee. I mean, that dude
is amazing.
He's just amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, he's a legend. I mean, I loved it. I loved all of his films, and you know, being such a big fan, I was trying to track down every single one of his movies. So I was always going to the video store trying to get like the new Bruce Lee movie, and it wasn't until it was a very nice video store clerk was finally like, well, you know, he only did 5 films. And I'm like, what? No, look at all this. And I'm like, down the Kung Fu aisle, I'm like, no, look at all these movies. They say Bruce Lee on it. And they're like, why don't you look a little closer? And I'd pick it up and it would say, Bruce Lee versus something, starring Bruce Lee or Bruce Lee or Dragon Lee.
Really?
Yeah, see? Oh, yeah, there's tons that exist, like dozens upon dozens. I'm not exactly sure if there is, like, an official number for how many Bruce Lee knockoff films there are. There's just so many.
Holy.
Yeah, so, I mean, I was always confused. I'm like, but he kind of looks like Bruce Lee, and I would look at the cover, and I'd be very confused. He had the haircut, you know, they'd always have that same look, that same, kind of stance and pose, and I'd rent them, I'd watch them, and I'd be like, these aren't Bruce Lee movies, but it looks like they're trying to be Bruce Lee. And, of course, I would look it up online, and yeah, the internet wasn't as good as it is now, but even nowadays, there's very little information about, like, these guys and who they were, and I've always just been fascinated, like, why did they make so many of these movies?
And
like,
I wonder,
there's a ton.
And it makes me wonder, because I didn't know that. I'm a heavy Bruce Lee fan. I haven't seen all of his movies even, but there's probably a lot of people who don't know that. I mean, now, as you say, when you're watching these films, they look like Bruce Lee. Like, would people? Now, you probably would know the difference, but are there differences that people could actually know if they just think they're watching a Bruce Lee movie and they don't know particular details? Is it obvious, or?
Well, I mean, a lot of these movies came out in like the 70s and the 80s, where, you know, like, the internet wasn't around.
Right.
You know, you had like the drive-in movies. You generally had like the double feature movies, where it's like you'd go to the theater and you could watch like the Grindhouse movies. You could pay a certain amount and you could go see 2 movies for the price of 1.
Right.
And like they had a movie come out every other week or so.
Right.
I mean, Bruce Lee, you know, he passed sadly, you know, he passed away in 1973. And a few of his films, generally his Hong Kong films, came out afterwards. Like, you know, you had Chinese Connection, Fist of Fury, Game of Death in particular. And so, like, you know, everybody, after Enter the Dragon, everybody would just love Bruce Lee. Everybody loved Kung Fu. And I think the way it started was in Asia. The Asian audience, the producers and studios were afraid that they could not sell a movie without the image of Bruce Lee, because he had made such an impact. He became popular here in America. He became popular over the world. So they were trying to get these actors but kind of copy his mannerisms to try to get that same magic. You know, because in Hollywood, everybody out here, they're always like, if something succeeds, let's copy it. I mean, you know, you've seen it multiple times. I mean,
I have.
Gosh, remember when I was a kid, the movie The Summer, where there was 2 giant asteroids about to destroy the Earth movie, had Armageddon, Deep Impact, and I mean, yeah, I mean, this is nothing new. I mean, like, this is something like where something is popular, everybody just tries to copy that.
Right, and you're right. It's happened so long. So, what was the inspiration behind Bruceploitation for you guys?
For me to make the documentary, it ultimately, I mean, at that age, I was just always fascinated with who these guys were. I eventually started buying the bargain bin DVDs for all these movies, and I was always just like, wow, wonder what these guys are doing now. And, you know, like, if I sat down with them and talked to them, I was just always curious. And then as I got older, I periodically checked the web, see if anything popped up, and I found maybe 1 or 2 interviews at the most, where it's maybe one of those guys, but they're like from a few years ago. Like, I would like to sit down with them now and see what they're doing.
Right.
But I would tell you, I'd say the inspiration for how it finally came down was when I finally graduated film school. I moved out here to LA, and I had an internship for Justin Lin's production company. Justin Lin, he did the Fast and Furious films.
Okay.
Yeah. I was interning with him for a very long time. Great guy. That company they're fantastic people. They really took care of me. They helped me get my foot in the door.
Right.
They helped me get work on sets. They're fantastic. I'm a big fan of Justin's work. He's great.
I know. Look, I know they've been keeping you busy because they are apparently doing some big things. Like, congratulations for being a part of that team as well.
Oh yeah, Justin's directing the next Star Trek movie. That's huge. In fact, and hopefully he's still going to be doing another. He's going to be doing a sequel to The Bourne Legacy with Jeremy Renner. And you know, I remember I congratulated him. Actually, like, had 5 minutes alone with him in an elevator. I said, "Hey man, congratulations on that." And, you know, he was really cool about it. And he's a really nice guy. He's cool.
All right. So now, if you know, without because I know how it is, without being, you know, having to give away too much, because we definitely want everybody to make sure they go check it out. But what will kind of give us a bit about what Bruceploitation will be about?
It will be. We're on Kickstarter right now. If you type in Bruceploitation documentary, you know, this project will come up. It is ultimately trying to fund my research, trying to track down all of these actors, like people that were involved, people that knew about it, and just sitting down and talking with them about like what this was. You know, we're just reflecting on it. Like, we're not, you know, we're not like endorsing it, we're not condemning it, we're not condoning it. We're just trying to like step back and just kind of talk to people about it and just be like, well, hey, what did you think? You know, this whole subject matter is something that a lot of people don't like to talk about.
And you know what? Sorry to cut you off, but I just had to jump in there and say, you know what? That is an amazing idea. That's a big deal because a lot of people don't know. You know, like, as you say, see, and this is just my opinion. You know, Bruce Lee, well respected, legendary. We all know that. But even the people who worked alongside in these films, as you say, and correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know. I'm kind of asking this question too. A lot of people are not familiar with even who these people are because, you know, obviously all the attention was on Bruce Lee. But just to find out, and just to talk to the people that were in these films and worked alongside and just get that real story, like you guys will be helping people out amazingly just to even learn and know these things and hear from these people.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say we're helping. We're just trying to uncover, like, information that a lot of people just tend to sweep under the rug. Like, when I've watched many Bruce Lee documentaries, and for good measure. I mean, Bruce Lee was fantastic. I love him. But then, you know, in every documentary, there's always a mention where he's like, and there were many imitators that came after Bruce Lee, but none of them lasted because none of them could be the guy. You know, and that's all true, but that doesn't mean that this subgenre of, like, films didn't exist.
Of course.
And ultimately, I kind of want to look at it like, but doesn't that say something? I mean, even after Bruce Lee died, you had so many people that loved his image and these films that, you know, you had people, maybe not for the best intentions, but they were trying to, you know, recreate that magic. They were trying to, like, keep Bruce Lee's, like, image alive. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I mean, I guess to a sense, it's like same thing with Elvis. You know, like when he passed away, you had so many Elvis impersonators. You know, but no one seems to have frowned so much upon upon that. In fact, you go to Vegas, everybody sees Elvis impersonators, you know, and it's like, oh, it's no big deal.
Right. And I go back to the reason I said we're helping people, because just in my generation, alone, listen, everybody, and I know even, up to probably 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago and on back, everyone was watching Kung Fu or karate fight in movies. And and the reason I say is helpful because a lot of people didn't know why. And I used to ask myself, I'm like, okay, why is everybody so into karate? Not everybody does it, And I don't know if I'm using the right term, Kung Fu, karate, because I know there obviously are different styles.
I would just say martial arts.
Yeah, martial arts. There you go. Okay. And so many people were into it and didn't know how to do it. So that's why I say it brings a lot to the forefront. It helps people to kind of really understand the art form itself. It gives people a whole new different way to respect it. Because if they're going to watch it and be so intertwined, it's important to respect the origin of it, though, I would assume.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah.
And so that, that's why I say that. That sounds like a wonderful idea. Now, how can people get involved with helping to support this movement?
Well, I mean, ultimately, we threw it up on Kickstarter. I sat down with a producer friend of mine. We kind of ran some numbers. They kind of shot me some really high numbers because they were talking about, you have international travel and you have what we want to do. We want to, of course, get the rights to use some of Bruce Lee's films, which are owned by the Bruce Lee estate, some are owned by Warner Brothers, and that's a lot of money right there. And, of course, we have to get permission through the Bruce Lee estate. We even want to interview Shannon Lee, who is Bruce Lee's daughter. We'd like to ask her, look, what did you think of it? We're trying to, I guess, approach it the best way we can because I've gotten contacted by a lot of people that are in the martial arts film industry. A lot of people have reached out. They said, hey, look, we love this idea. We think it's great. We want to see this happen. Yeah, but I got one email in particular. I won't say who, but they say, like, I don't know if Shannon will want to talk about it. And I understand. And it's one of those things where we're going to have to, explain it. Like, look, this is our intention. We're not trying to condemn or condone what this was, but it's still, we're not trying to put this in a negative light. We're not trying to put this in a positive light. We're just trying to show it and just, say, hey, look, this happened. And we just want to know what you think.
That's a big deal. That is a really big deal, what you guys are talking about that you're delving into, because even when you mention even talking to her, that is serious and legendary. I don't even know if anybody's ever done that. Like, did we know, over here where we're at, I don't even know if that's been done. A lot of people wouldn't have heard about it. I think you guys would be breaking monumental ground with this. I mean, to you, it might not seem like much. I mean, this is what you do, but this is really serious.
No, I agree. I mean, and a lot of it just really it stems back to me when I was a kid of like, well, look, the only reason I'm doing this is really because I want to know who these guys were. I'm just curious, and I don't think it, like for me, I mean, especially with the image of Bruce Lee, I don't think it hurts it. If anything, Bruce is going to be, at the end of the day, Bruce Lee is still going to be Bruce Lee. He's going to be great. Everyone's still going to love him. Right. And this is just sort of a weird little thing that happened, It's like, I kind of look at it like, for people that get mad about it or they're ashamed of it, I just say, look, I mean, it's kind of just dumb but harmless. It's silly, but it's entertaining and it does have a fan base and fans want to know. And I see people just being curious too.
Well, yeah, that's the main thing is people would have to be curious. I'm curious as of now. Now, when you talk about people that might have a reason to be upset, do you think it could be that they might find that reason because you're talking to people who try to portray Bruce Lee and they might think that it's taken away from him? I
mean, I will say, yeah, that's probably a reason. I'd say another reason was because obviously it was because of some producers, they were just trying to make a quick buck. They were like, well, we can make a guy that looks like Bruce, and we'll make that money. And maybe that was definitely not for the right reasons to make those films.
Right.
And there's that. I'll tell you a story right here. I actually did speak with one of the actors who was considered a Bruceploitation actor. I won't say his name on here. Right. He's a great man. He's a really nice guy, and I asked him, I said, well, listen, could we just talk about it? Could we just, just sit down? And he was just pushing at arms. He's like, not physically, but, he said, I don't want to talk about it. It's something I'm not proud of.
Oh, wow.
And I said, but, yeah, and film that wasn't supposed to be one, but it was wound up edited to look like one when it came out here in America. And I ultimately was just like, well, look, but you could tell that side of the story. You could explain that, look, I didn't make that. These greedy producers or these guys made that. You know, and I said, I think, you know, especially me as a documentary filmmaker, I said, look, that would be really powerful in this story. But, you know, he didn't want to talk about it, and I respected his wishes. But I might try back again, and maybe if we can get some more, build this documentary up a bit, then maybe we could probably talk to him and convince him to sit down and just tell his side of the story, you know?
Yeah, you know what, and I'll tell you what, I you know, what you're doing is important, and it's definitely a serious nature, you know, documentary worthy. And listen, I just want to wish you guys the best on this, because listen, you're doing this, and it's an edgy topic. First of all, it's, you know, it's edgy, but it's interesting at the same time, and it's something that I feel like, you know, should be brought to light. You're taking on a challenge here, definitely, Nickolas. Do you consider it as a challenge at all, or?
Oh, completely. But this has been it's been a long passion project of mine. I've just always wanted to I've always wanted to find out the information, because a lot of people are like, well, how are you going to do it? How are you going to go about it? And I said, well, I have an idea, but at the same time, we don't know anything about these guys and where they came from and how these projects came about. So until we get these interviews, until we sit these guys down and you know, find out the story, you know, it's like, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, we have to sit down and we got to find out, and then we build the story from there and how we're going to present it. But
right.
I think it's all there. It just needs to be shot, you know?
Yeah, and you got to get the connection phone numbers to get in touch with these guys. And like you say, hopefully they'll be willing to talk. And for even some of them, I'm assuming age might be a difference now, right? So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because a lot of these guys, and this is another difficult part, was that a lot of the big actors that were around during that whole 70s Kung Fu craze, a lot of them are kind of hard to track down. I mean, some of them are a lot easier than others, but some, it's like you almost have to know a person that knows a person to speak with them. You know what I mean?
Right. Now, I agree with you. What you was about to say, that's going to be difficult. But I feel like you will be able to make this happen. Now, is this so far in your career? Is this your, would this be your? I don't want to say difficult, but would this be one of your most pressuring projects to pull off?
I mean, it's definitely been one that it's been in the back of my head, like, wow, I would love to see this.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, is this my peak moment? Like, is this where like I'll do this and I'll have reached that mountain? There's nothing else.
Of course. Look, I know better than that. Yeah, I know better than that. Right. That's not what I meant.
I would say far from. No, in fact, it's funny because I initially had no desire to ever want to make a documentary. When I was in film school, I had worked on documentaries, and I had went to school with a few kids that really wanted to major in that. They said, "Look, I want to be a documentary filmmaker," and I said, I really don't. I just don't have that passion. I want to write something. I want to do narrative films. But when I graduated, I kept coming back to this, and I just said, wow, this is a really great idea. And I'll go back to, I mean, I trailed off when I was talking that story about interning with Justin. I mean, Justin is a huge Bruce Lee fan, and that kind of reignited my passion a bit.
Okay.
So much so that I actually sat down with a really great guy. He's the name John Pearson. If you don't know who that is, he's considered the godfather of indie films. He helped guys like Spike Lee, Michael Moore, Kevin Smith, Richard Linklater. He helped get their films off the ground.
Oh, wow.
He sat down with me and we talked about it. I said, hey, I have this idea. I think it'd be a really great documentary. And I was initially trying to maybe have him like say, hey, do you know anybody that could produce it? You know, that kind of thing. And he said, well, I think it's a great idea. I would love to see this get made. And then he's like, I don't know anyone that would want to do it. And I was like, oh, darn. And he kind of said, well, what's stopping you? And then that was like, whoa. Like, I like kind of a wake-up call. Like, what is stopping me?
Good point he made, right?
Oh, of course.
You know what, and I know you said you wasn't really thinking about a documentary, but I think now that you've put this on your shoulders, you're definitely in the right area of a documentary. This is, there's a lot of documentaries to get made, but this is one that brings us back home. It's a wonderful story that people would love to hear about. That would be amazing.
Oh, of course. Well, but it's also got another level too to it, because there's a huge fan base for these films, like especially in the UK. Like, people just them are from England, and they all just love these, are considered Bruceploitation films. I like a few of them too. I mean, like, I've watched a few of them, and I can sit down and I'm like, oh, these are actually kind of fun films. I don't know. There's something about, you know, the 2010s. It's like everybody can appreciate like a bad movie. You know what I mean?
I can see everybody, and this is just even from a lot of the houses and places that I've been in. I can really see a lot of people watching this. I know they will. I mean, that's just from my experience and just seeing what people like to watch. And this is I feel like it's a green light, and I think you all should go for it. Now, can you explain to everybody out there, to all the listeners, how to be able to get involved and to show you guys support and maybe donate and things of that nature, or what sites they can go to?
Well, definitely they can go to Kickstarter. I mean, that's the big thing. We're early in our campaign. We're nowhere near the budget. We just cracked 1,000 actually as of today.
Okay.
I set the goal pretty high. You know, it's 96K, a lot of money. But, you know, of course, this goes into international traveling, obtaining film rights, talking to a lot of people. And in addition to that, there's also people here in the U.S. that we have to fly out. Like, we have to fly to Seattle, we have to fly to New York. Mm-hmm. All these people. And it's just about, you know, getting in touch with them, sitting down with them, and talking about it. So traveling is one of the biggest expenses. Then you have, like, film rights, you know, being able to use that stuff. And then some stuff that I would like to do, the filmmaker in me, that doesn't want to do documentary, you know, we thought about maybe recreating some scenes, shooting it with actors and stand-ins. That's just one of the many ideas that we've had.
And a lot of different scenarios. So people can go to Kickstarter. Now listen, real quick before we get out of here, because is there any, are the regular people, are people out there, just people that are listening in and things like that, is there a website that they can go to, or is there a Kickstarter website that they can go to and possibly find you guys to be able to donate, or how does that work?
Just go to Kickstarter.com, type in Bruceploitation documentary. It'll be the only thing that pops up. There's all types of ways that they can pledge. They can pledge $1. They can pledge $5. You know, we have, if they really want to go big or go home, they could be a co-producer, $10,000. I mean, like, the skies are endless, and we can. In addition to that, you know, we'll give signed DVDs that get funded, T-shirts, posters, signed prints. The sky's the limit. Everything is on there.
Right. Okay. Listen, everybody out there listening all over the world, and I'm glad this is a global show too, because everyone globally knows about Bruce Lee, and I think this is a wonderful project for everybody to get involved with. Now, if you cannot, and I'm going to ask in just a quick second if there's a just you guys have a website, but also what I'm going to be doing, Nickolas, is what I'll do is I'll on my social media site too, I will make sure that I use you guys' link, and I put you guys' link up so people can click it and then go find to Kickstarter, or just go find out how they can donate to you guys' project as well, if it makes it any easier for people. Now, is there a website or something that people can go follow you at?
They can follow me on my personal Twitter. It is D.M.V.KeithHarris Nielsen. Or they can follow the documentary, which is also on Twitter, called Bruceploitation Doc. You can follow us on Facebook at Bruceploitation Documentary, or Good Moral Pictures, which is the production company that's producing it. And I also have to throw out our associate producer. His name is Lee Holmes. Created an awesome website that helped me with my obsession with this many years ago, called theclonesofbrucelee.co.uk. Follow him on Twitter, Clones of Bruce Lee, Facebook, Clones of Bruce Lee. He's an awesome guy. He lives in England, but he's been helping me with research. He's been helping me with connections with a lot of these people. And, without him, I could not, get this off the ground. He's been an amazing help.
All right. Sounds good. Listen, Nickolas Nielsen, we thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Look, I'm looking forward to having you back on also, so we can talk more about this. Okay, and help get this project up and get everybody out there involved to do all that we can. It's a wonderful idea, and we'll be talking to you soon, Nickolas.
Thank you so much, Keith. Thank you again for having me, man.
Thank you for being here. Bye-bye. That was Nickolas Nielsen on the Keith Harris Show, Industry International. Wonderful idea. Bruce Lee project in the making, Bruceploitation, and we look forward to hearing or seeing that come up as well. So make sure you stay, check the websites that he gave. Also check my social media site, because I will have the links up there to where you can be found, or where he can be found, and where you can get involved in this documentary. So once again, big shout outs to Nickolas Nielsen for being on the show today. Big shout outs to his whole team, all the wonderful work that he's been doing and been involved with. And we look forward to hearing a lot more from him as well. You have been listening to the Keith Harris Show, Industry International. Once again, we thank you for being involved with us. We couldn't do it without you. We wouldn't want to know what it felt like to do it without you. We'll see you tomorrow.